Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Fringe podcast. We're back. The boys are back.
We're back.
Presented by Imperial Golf. We're back. Did we go anywhere? I don't know.
No.
Not really.
Not really.
We got busy.
Just got busy. Yeah, the weather's getting nice. The golf is getting better. The grass is actually green. Like
It is golf season finally.
Greens are
Yeah.
getting green.
the green's getting green.
Got more greenery. Yeah.
Yeah.
All kinds.
All that stupid zoysia finally not dormant anymore.
It's getting there.
Just has to be like 85 for 2 weeks. And
That was a
start
nice
growing.
thing when I drove into the course earlier this week, and it was like, oh, it's green now because it's been, I think, 2
Trees
or 3
have
weeks since I've
leaves.
been out. Yeah, I'm actually cool with those not having leaves, but I do like green grass. It just feels right.
Yeah.
It's nice when
Fair.
they truly are like 90% air. You can just go right through.
You can see there's a lot more holes without the leaves.
I have better visibility, and I like that. So, yeah.
And make
I
dumber
understand.
decisions.
Yeah. I can fit it through that gap.
Maybe.
Not.
There's like 18 gaps there. I could hit one of them.
I found the 19th.
Yes. Yes. Well, gentlemen, Masters,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that was insane.
That was awesome.
Rory.
That was awesome. Really cool.
You took my word.
I did.
Come up with your own word.
It was wonderful.
Excellent.
Awesome. I mean, is that really proprietary?
Polarizing. Actually, it's Rory. So he seems to be a love-or-hate guy all of a sudden after the last couple years,
Well, yeah, with
depending on who you talk to.
his perspective on the live stuff, a lot of people took issue with.
Well, and the PGA Tour's perspective
yeah.
on live.
Via him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I
It's
was
both.
I was kind of conflicted. I don't know about you guys, but I'd kind of fallen off of his bandwagon for a while just because of the statements he had made through the couple years, going like, yeah, this isn't really your opinion. You're just being told to bash these guys like the Golf Channel was the whole time. And
Oh, I think he actually believed it.
I think that was his opinion.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah. You
But I
mean
mean-
about the live stuff, or
no, I think what he was told was, we need you to be talking negatively, and then he took that to.
well,
It's like when you give tell a teenager you can swear now, and then they just abuse it.
He's also Irish. I mean, there's
Yeah.
just some of that in the culture, too.
Yeah.
Well, there's no question he's never been shy about his opinion. It was more just like it felt so over the top with some of the things that he was saying
Sure.
that I'm like, it didn't feel scripted. It just felt like you were being prompted by somebody saying like, hey, we need you to make sure you're bashing these guys at every chance you get. And then when everything flipped and the merger kind of popped up, you could tell he was just like, well, okay, like they just stabbed me in the back, and I don't
Yeah.
blame him for that. Like that's where I kind of felt for him a little bit, because I'm like, well,
Yeah.
he was put in a really tough position, and so
It seems like he's changed though. Like he seems tired of the media and from playing that role.
yeah,
Because and he made comments about kind of snarky comments about YouTube golf
right,
and stuff, and
Yeah.
that was like clearly his opinion,
Yeah.
a very strong one at that.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I think he's also just tired of playing that role, which you kind of get it. I mean, you're there to do a job.
yeah, and because YouTube's so new,
Yeah.
going back through his comments, I don't entirely disagree with him from an entertainment
because they're
standpoint.
trying to integrate YouTube golf into actual PGA tournaments,
Right,
which it is kind of a weird crossover.
it is, and
Bryson can do it.
Well,
Actual PGA Tour player.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
well,
Yeah, we're talking about like
Burn.
live player.
we're talking about Bob Does Sports here.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
God love them. I actually love their content.
Well,
but
and
they probably don't belong in a PGA Tour event.
I don't know if you guys saw the news yesterday, but the PGA Tour suspended Wesley Bryan.
Yeah, I
for
did see that.
His
yeah.
participation in the
What was the
Creator
suspension
Classic.
about?
He played in an unsanctioned event.
Like a live duel thing.
Yeah, it was that Miami Duels.
Yeah. That's
It was mostly a YouTube golf thing, and they were paired up with different.
So it wasn't a real tournament.
Pros.
It was like literally a YouTube thing.
Yes, but there was prize money involved, so
Oh.
that's where it.
Was that the hiccup?
I believe so.
Yeah.
If that wasn't, they would have found a different one.
Yeah.
They would have found something. So,
I mean, to be fair, I think there's a place for collaboration, and that's probably not it.
Yeah.
Like it's cool to see tour players doing more stuff on YouTube and then cross
Yeah,
over that
for sure.
way. But I don't think the PGA Tour is necessarily wrong in trying to create a boundary there.
Yeah.
between like
Yeah,
their events and YouTube.
But
yeah.
the rules they cited were, I don't know if it was from the 50s or 60s. It was a very old rule that didn't have things like YouTube golf tournaments in mind when
Right.
it was implemented.
Why?
And I didn't read too much into it.
What do you
I
mean?
don't have all the details, but I just know it's basically an archaic rule that they cited that he breached. So
Sure.
he willingly, he knew there was a chance of him getting suspended, and he said that
sure.
up front when he went to play in the tournament. But he's like, he's spending more time YouTube golf wise than actual tournaments at this point.
Well, he'll make more money doing that
Yeah.
Yeah, also true.
because he's one of the best YouTube golfers out there, probably.
If
I'd
not
say
the best.
probably
Or
is.
those brothers,
Yeah,
yeah.
I would
Yeah.
say he
His
is.
brother's pretty good too.
Yeah, George
Yeah.
Bryan.
Yeah.
He actually made the cut at the Bermuda Championship last year. He got a
George.
an exemption into a PGA Tour event, and actually made the cut in
There
that
you go.
tournament. So yeah, he's definitely a
It-
very
we
good
just-
golfer himself.
We just earned them 2 more viewers.
They probably
We earned them more viewers
hopefully
than we
have
did.
earned us 2 more viewers.
Yeah, no doubt.
So, just by mentioning them. So,
Probably not.
well, while you
thousands.
move your mic a little closer to your noggin there, let's get back to the Masters because this was cool.
Yes,
This was a good day.
it was.
And it was insane. Like, as an amateur guy, I watched most of the round because I was actually flying out to California that day. So I got to watch much of it, but not all of it. And so, like, I watched the first 4 holes where
Yeah.
Rory's up by a couple. All of a sudden, after hole number 1, he's tied at 10 under. Hole 2, he's now down 1 to DeChambeau.
Yeah.
Hole 3, now they flip. Rory's back to 11.
Bryson makes like a double or something.
Yeah, Bryson's at bogey. He's at 10.
Oh, yeah.
And then hole 4, Bryson bogeys, McIlroy birdies. So now it's 12 under, 9 under. This is where I had to stop watching for a little just because I was on planes. And so they cruise along for a little while until hole 10. Now we've got Rory at 14 under. Justin Rose all of a sudden out of the blue at 10 under.
Yep.
Bryson's still sitting at 9 under. Hole 11, Rory bogeys, Rose bogeys, DeChambeau double bogeys. Hole 12.
Oh, that's where his double was.
Yep.
Yeah.
12, Oberg's all of a sudden in the mix at 9 under. And then hole 13. So at the same moment that Rose jumps up 2 strokes, or a stroke or, no, 2 strokes.
He made birdie.
Yeah, at 16, by 16, he's at 11 under. McIlroy double bogeys.
Yep.
Yeah.
And like I'm watching this going, dude, I can do that. And then 15, McIlroy picks one up, Rose loses one, 16, we're square at 11 under. 17, McIlroy's up by 1. And then the bogey on 18 to tie it back up with Rose and force the playoff.
Right.
And I'm just sitting here going, there's no way. Like, I wouldn't have completely lost my mind at this point. And so I told JT the other day, I texted him, I said, we got to talk about this whole mental game because how Rory actually stayed competitive through, I blew 3 strokes and I'm now losing in the first 2 holes to now I'm ahead 5 strokes. To now I'm tied, now I'm ahead, I bogeyed, and then like still have enough to finish the playoff. Like, good Lord.
But there was a fluctuation with a lot of the players, though. It wasn't
Sure.
just Rory. I mean, DeChambeau was fighting the whole time.
Yeah, he never really came back though.
No.
I mean,
Yeah.
Oberg fought in a little bit, and
Yeah.
Justin Rose obviously had
Yeah.
an incredible day at 6 under, but just that roller coaster.
So that actually was, and I've talked about this with a few clients, but my favorite part about this Masters was the absolutely realistic display of how golf goes, which is like, it's a battle. And then everybody talked about the visible weight being lifted off of Rory's shoulders when he dropped to his knees on the playoff hole. And it was like, that's because you just watched 11 to 14 years of stress.
Sure.
Right.
Just leave the
Yep.
body, but also because that was one heck of a grind for that final round.
Right.
So that just added to the drama.
No, I think I would have probably aged 5 years that day
Yeah.
if I had done that.
Well, he's 35 and has plenty of gray hairs, so that'll tell you.
But it's good for the average golfer because it shows people that they don't just cruise control through these rounds.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it's a pure grind.
But the question is how?
Yeah.
Because like legitimately, all of a sudden you lose 3 strokes first 2 holes. Like how in the world do you hold it together and go, okay, I'm cool?
Well, I mean, it's obviously a pretty layered question, but and if you go back and watch some of Rory's interviews after the fact, he's pretty open. I mean, that's, again, one of my favorite qualities he has. Whether I agree with his opinion or not doesn't really matter, but he's pretty honest. He's pretty upfront, and we never got that with Tiger. So whether Tiger was nervous and you could visibly see his body language change through the round, he'd get done with it afterwards and be like, oh yeah, that was a pretty good shot. Oh, that was a pretty bad shot. And that's kind of all he would give you. Course played real tough. Like that was like, it's just robotic.
In fairness, he won like 50% of tournaments for 3 years. So,
well, we'll come back to that. But because I saw some stats recently that was just like, good Lord. But no, with Rory particularly, he's so relatable.
Yeah.
Because of how he seems to wear his emotions. And the visual of him hitting his wedge shot from 90 yards on 13 into the water and then just on, like his hands go to his knees and he's just like, I'm like, yeah, I've done that every round I've ever played. I feel like hit a shot and went just like, oh my gosh, like what the heck am I doing here? And so to see someone who's arguably the most talented player we've seen in the last 15 years really having this tug of war on this golf course and just fighting like his internal belief, it's hard to quantify it, I think, really. And what you'll notice with his interviews recently, because there's so much now that has popped up through my feed of podcasts and appearances he's done, and he's clearly done a lot of work on just trying to focus on process. And there's a clip from Xander last year when he won the British after the fact where someone talked about how, he was saying, the reporter was saying to Xander, like, hey, you talk about process all the time, but how does this, win feel for you? And he's like, well, it's a result. He's like, I know this sounds insane to you all, but he's like, if I do what I'm supposed to do, this is a result of what I'm doing. And I'd say Xander's way more polished than Rory in that category, mindset wise. He doesn't advertise how he's feeling. You've got players who are animated. Xander's not one of those guys.
No.
He's kind of robotic. And so Rory just has enough talent to overcome some of that stuff. Guys like Patrick Cantlay, he's openly talked about how I can get into game mode, but I can't come out of it because I'm not talented enough to have an explosion or a mindset setback and then recover, basically. And so I think it takes a level of awareness per player to know what you can get away with and what you can't. And as someone who was a classic overthinker, I've found that I have to get quite a bit robotic in competition to not let myself go too high or low. I couldn't have those like outbursts emotionally and bad body language like you saw from Rory so many times and still overcome it. It would bleed into, negative outcomes too much by the end of the round.
And in fairness, for many years, neither could he.
Right. Yeah. At least at Augusta, everywhere else he seemed to win and overcome that stuff.
Yeah.
And
well, it becomes a trend after a while. And then you've got the whole weight of the world on you, criticizing you online. And as much as you try to ignore that, there's no way you're completely oblivious to it.
I have a hard time with it, yeah.
It's a weird... It's a weird thought
the world's
process.
Very critical of you.
Nobody's talking about me online.
They'd have to watch the podcast first.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah.
No, it is a weird thought to how do you improve your internal monologue. And I think a lot of people just don't really, much like trying to improve your golf game, they don't know where to begin. They don't know how to approach that. I've read some sports psych material just to get some insight, and it gives you some nuggets and things to work on. But it's such a cheesy thing at first to have to go in and just remain this eternal optimist, which even Rory talked about after the fact. Like that's his greatest strength is he's just always like, yep, okay, next shot, kind of an attitude. And that's really what it led to. And speaking specifically to the playoff, he mentioned his caddy, and I think this is where we don't get enough insight as to those relationships, where Harry was like, hey, we'd have taken a playoff if you talked to us Monday, right? And that's all it took for Rory to just flip the switch and go, yep, okay. And then he hit the exact same drive, just in a slightly better position on 18 because he had a more level lie. And if you go back to both wedge shots, it was largely, and I don't know if we could have caught the audio between their discussions, but I'd be fascinated to know if the lie of those wedge shots at 13 and 18 were just not talked about enough. Because on 13, he landed by a drain, and there was this upslope where he was at. And with an upslope, your body won't quite transition through to your left side as much. So you're going to get that little bit of a flare where maybe he was just, 4 or 5 degrees right of his target line, and that's all it took. And then on 18 in regulation, he's on that downslope coming off the bunker, same kind of thing. Flared it just enough right into the bunker to where now he's got to get up and make a sand save. And it was like, man, this is literally the epitome of his struggles have been amongst his peers. He's not a great wedge player. And coming down the stretch, those two swings are really what allowed him to lose his lead. So, yeah, I feel like it wasn't just him. Obviously, Harry plays a big role with his mindset. They're best friends dating back to when they were 6, 7. So he's not doing it alone, and most amateurs have to. So that's a hard realization too.
That's my problem.
You need a caddy.
You need a caddy,
hire
yeah.
a caddy.
You.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is
They
helpful.
only take 10% of your winnings.
I'm in.
Pay you $6.
Although I did play a tournament 2 weeks ago and I got a $100 Amazon gift card. So
there you go.
Still
Yeah.
you could have still made $90 and played better.
yeah, I wouldn't have covered the flight. Yeah.
It's an expensive game.
Well,
Yeah.
and when I saw, as soon as Rory hit that bunker shot on 18 before the playoff, I was like, it's another 4.5 footer.
Yep.
It's the U.S. Open all over again.
Right.
And then when he missed it, I was like, Rose is going to win this.
I thought the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
mentally, he was
Yep.
able to reset, like you said,
Yep.
from his caddy. And
Well,
he'd
and-
already hit a good drive. It was
Yeah.
just the
Right.
second shot that got out of position. So if he could just replicate the drive, it's like he can make the adjustment to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He
So
stuck at the 3 feet.
It's also important to note that in a situation like that, there's some chance involved.
Right.
You're relying on the
Sure.
whole field to also do things. So it's like even if you are sticking to your process and doing everything as best you can, you still might get beat out. So I mean, it's like important to note. Like,
Right.
Well, that's like Justin Rose. I mean, he hardly made a mistake all day,
yeah,
but because of his position where he started, it wasn't enough.
right.
Not quite. He made 2 bogeys in the back 9, but he also made
I think he had a lot of
6
fans
birdies.
for that.
Yeah.
For that Masters though.
Well, did he shoot 7 under?
6.
Yeah.
6
under. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So for us mere mortals who dream of shooting those kinds of rounds, how do we get there?
Oh man, layers.
Are we talking
Are you saying
execution
how do you
or
get
mindset?
to shooting 6 under? What are you asking?
The mental side of this. Come on, stay with me here. Same podcast.
You're not going to.
No,
Mindset.
6 under?
No. Forget it. I'm not talking about the score.
I know.
I'm talking about being able to, because this is why this came to mind the other day, because I played Tuesday morning. I was on my own. So I was just out early on my own. And it's like, oh, that's great. Oh, that's not good. Oh, that sucks. And then, it's that constant battle.
Yeah.
Clearly, I'm not as good at it as Rory might be.
Yeah, so I mean, you were kind of alluding to this earlier with self-awareness, but it does start with figuring out how many of your strokes are being lost because of mental mistakes, which is tough to figure out. And you have to do a lot of examining, like post-round, to kind of figure that out. Like, I'm this many over par, and but how many of these mistakes were mental errors more than physical?
Sure.
Because they obviously work together. So I'd say it kind of starts there. Like, if you're shooting at your absolute capacity to your skill level, that means you're not making any added mental mistakes, which is easier said than done. But it's like, maybe your scoring average is 86, and on a given day, 89 is the best you can do with the conditions. But if you tack on 4 extra 3 putts and a couple double chips, because you just weren't focused or you didn't make decisions pre-shot. So it starts, to me, it may be oversimplified, but it starts with pre-shot routine, which is just learning to have a better pre-shot routine, so that you have like a game plan going into each shot. And that's the tough part about the up and down, is you're you're still pulling emotions in from the last shot and not really refocusing to hit the next one. And so that's kind of, I would say, 101 version, right?
Yeah.
Like just being able to clear first. You can't be pulling crap with you into your next shot.
Well, clearly I can.
Not successfully.
You got to exit it somehow.
Yeah.
I remember watching a Rick Shields video from a few years ago, and he was notorious at that time for being an awful short game player. Like, he would have double chips, chunks, blades all the time.
Isn't he like a scratch golfer?
Rick, yeah, he's
Not that
probably
good.
like a 2 or 3 handicap.
Oh, okay.
He's gotten better in the last couple of years with a lot more coaching, a lot more practice. But he was playing against, I forget who it was, but it was a retired tour pro or current senior tour pro player. And he was just watching, like Rick had mentioned at the beginning of the round, like, my short game's terrible. I can't chip. Like, if I'm inside, I'd rather be 100 yards than 10 yards. I can
Sounds
get it
familiar.
closer. And I just remember the pro was watching him, and he's like 4 or 5 holes in. He just whispers to the camera, his routine pre-shot has been different every chip.
Yep.
Like, he took 4 practice swings on this shot. He took 1 2 holes ago for a similar chip shot. He just had no consistency in his routine, so you're in a completely different state.
Or better yet,
Going into the shot.
Easy to tell when he's scared shitless because he'd take 10 practice swings.
Right. Yeah, when it's a
Versus
more
when you feel
challenging
good about
shot.
it and you take 1.
So there was no confidence and no consistency.
Yeah.
And it led to poor outcomes all the time.
I'd add to that, there needs to be clarity in what you're doing. And what I mean is creating a ball flight identity for each player. I've talked about this a lot in the last few weeks. We're in the middle of men's golf season, so we got a lot of players that have plenty of good golf swings, but it's like the default is they just tee it up and aim down the middle and then just
Try to hit it straight.
hopefully my miss isn't too big. Instead of assertively saying, I'm going to draw it off of this marker, step in and hit that golf shot. Because in a driving range setting where you're free of consequence, a lot of these players have that ability, and we see it in here on a daily basis where it's like, well, I want you to hit it left, I want you to hit it right, and then they do it.
Sometimes you get
On
extreme
command.
examples where you're just like shocked at actually how good they can do it.
Yeah.
And they're like convincing you ahead of time, like, I don't know how to work the ball. What are you talking about? And it's like, just do this, like align this way and intend to start the ball there, and then they just do it.
It's going
Like,
left or right.
Clearly you can. You maybe can't do it to a really tight margin, but you can move the ball the way you want to. You just got to think about it. Instead of defaulting to like target line and, well, I'm just going to try to hit this shot straight and hopefully it stays somewhere close.
Right. Because I don't remember if you recall this conversation, John, but like when I got done with, so the last tournaments I would have played was in 2021, and both rounds I played, I didn't particularly strike the ball well, and so it was at a time where I really hadn't committed to being a fade or a draw player, and was kind of struggling with that identity of just, okay, I can hit it both directions, but not really when I want to. And so I found myself at a point where I'm like, not panicking, but I'm like, man, is my equipment right? Is there something off in my swing? And so, I had pulled John aside, as I often do when I'm like to a point where I'm like, okay, I need a direction to go at this point as a player. And our conversation was something to the effect of, you were just knowing my swing for so many years. You're like, well, you know how to hit a fade, so just hit the fade. Kind of like pick a lane, basically, is what he was saying. And so I took that and went, well, okay, but I play a draw really easily now, so I'm just going to commit to that exclusively for a while, rather than trying to play both directions when I don't have the time to perfect them, and so I'm not good at either one of them. And so getting really one-dimensional helped immensely. I mean, it was really noticeable on my stat sheets. I started hitting more greens. I started acquiring more targets. And it just simplified the narrative. So I wasn't having to think, well, I'm going to try and aim left and then hopefully I cut it or whatever, because it was such a a difficult thing to like aim left and then I'm missing left and then I'm aiming right and then I'm missing right. And now I'm thinking to myself, I have this two-way miss. When that's not really the case, I'm just not committed to the shot that I'm trying to hit. And so that was a massive hurdle for me mentally as a player to overcome. And ever since then, you know, I've remained pretty darn consistent when it came to my shot shape and acquiring targets. And my green and regs went up a good 10% just from that.
So you were
detail.
talking about like how we get amateurs in here to often do things on command, at least relatively.
Mm-hmm.
It hurts that amateur that they're often going into it assuming they don't know how to work the ball at all.
Right.
And so then there's that lack of intention that follows after, and that's when they just take dead aim at the flag. So a lot of golfers are just convinced by the fact I'm not good enough, so why would I even try? And you hear that in lessons too. And so then their alternative game plan is to take dead aim and try to hit it straight, which means they're never happy because straight's not really possible
Right.
on command.
Right.
So they're actually more confused because they can fire both sides of straight all day long, and they have no clue what they want to do. So that's just playing off what he's saying with establishing some kind of ball flight ahead of time. And it's mainly about hitting the margins, not exactly what you want. You got to be realistic with it. So if you're trying to hit a draw around a dog leg or something, you may not hit the exact ball flight you see in your head, but it should limit the margin, and the overall narrative is you shoot lower.
Yeah.
Because you're controlling the outcome by proxy.
I think that's one of the fun things about all the TV broadcast stuff starting to have the shot tracers on TV now is you're actually starting to see the ball flight more and more. Mm-hmm. And some of them you're just going, what happened there? And they're going, I don't know.
Right.
But I'll figure it out from here.
Yeah.
You know, it used to be, it's hard to see ball flight on a camera.
Oh, yeah.
And so seeing that shot tracer is really fascinating because some of those guys, they move the ball a lot.
Yeah, but that's the main part too, is it shows you how intentional they are with moving the ball.
Right.
And straight shots are not non-existent, but mostly in the approaches, right? The wedges and the short wedge shots that don't have a lot of movement.
Right.
But off the tee and with long game, like, it's constant movement, and it's whatever the player is most comfortable with to a degree.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like I think it's helped the average golfer at least see a little bit more of, yeah, I'm really doing this wrong, to just try to like take dead aim at center and hope it works out.
Most of us know we're doing it wrong. We just don't know what right looks like.
Well, and then you're getting into, on-course lessons where we're talking alignment and a lot of players have, they don't have a commitment to a ball flight, and then B, they really don't know how to aim and play for it. And I've done a lot of educating a player just on our sim of, okay, we're going to keep you lined up here, and I'm just going to aim you right of this target, and now you're going to play your ball flight, and they'll hit 8 out of 10 shots onto the putting surface finally instead of missing it left of the green. And I'm like, this is how you're utilizing your ball flight better, right? And so as opposed to them not really even recognize, sometimes they're just oblivious. They're not even recognizing that they're aiming at the middle. They're just stepping up and swinging. There's no intention. So it's almost a case of they just don't know what they don't know. And we're trying to illuminate like, hey, if you have intention and a ball flight, you can kind of characterize and aim yourself. And for some odd reason, as a younger player, and I'm old enough to have grown up where there wasn't shot tracers, there wasn't any of that. And I remember vividly watching tournaments to where that down the line view, it seemed like every shot went like this off the golf club. And I'm just like, and then they cut then they cut to the green where it's like landed, and I'm like, this is bullshit. Like he just shanked it. It's just not, it's like
clever editing.
Yeah, I'm like, this is just magic. These guys aren't that straight. Yeah. But it was enough to where you go out to the course then, and you're not worried about straight. At least I wasn't. It was, well, I've got this leaky fade that doesn't really go anywhere, so I better just aim left. And I hit a lot of greens as an amateur doing that. I was an awful putter, but I could hit the green at least, And so I think, yes, there's a benefit to the shot tracers, but I also think people get this ideal picture in their head, whether they realize that or not, and they're trying to hit something that's, I'm like, you're not going to hit it as straight as Scheffler. Like, he's just a robot in that way. And so we need to figure out what your ball flight looks like and then leverage it and use it. you know. And so that's part of the discovery method with most golfers. As you're improving their swing, what ball flight do we start to uncover more naturally? And then how do we account and aim for that so that while you're on the golf course, you're not, you know, trying to just guide it down the middle of the fairway.
That happens with better players too, though. I'm sure you heard the conversation, but I have a younger guy that I'm training that actually played some small college golf, and he was taking a very perfectionist approach on his alignment. I don't know if you heard that lesson happening, but it was like he really just needed permission to not try to do everything perfectly square.
Oh.
And so that's like the whole benefit of having another voice or a caddy.
Right.
And so it's like, how the hell do you get that when you're on your own? And a really simple but effective trick is to actually verbalize what you want to do to yourself, like out loud.
All right.
And it seems silly and people think you're crazy because you're just talking out loud all by yourself.
Right.
But that actually has a positive effect on it just gets you hearing the words instead of just thinking it in your head.
Yep.
And it's kind of a similar effect of like why we try to write things down, to be more mindful, to make habit changes in our lives or whatever. You write it down because it's another form of medium that isn't just thought. Because we're not really good at digesting our thoughts in general, at least on our own.
Right.
So that verbalization, like I don't do it all the time, but I've noticed it really helps me go, okay, what am I trying to do here?
Yeah.
And I'll literally say that like out loud. What am I trying to do? Yep. Like, what do I see? What's the wind doing? What's the slope? What do I want this ball flight to look like? And then if I get anywhere close to what I drew up, you know, verbally and in my head, it's like, okay, that's a win.
Do you high five yourself after that?
Try not to. Trying to
He
limit.
goes for pat on the back.
I'm
with
trying
the-
to limit what's going to put me in a padded cell. So.
Well, I mean, speaking of the Bryan Bros earlier, George Bryan did that exact same thing when he hit his hole-in-one on his channel. He's like, he just looks back at the camera. All right, I'm going to walk you guys how to hit a hole-in-one. And then he verbalized every step of his process, what he was trying to feel.
Yeah.
And then he executed it perfectly and hit a hole-in-one.
Right.
Yeah.
Which we
Nice
had,
Yeah.
coincidence. Right.
But-
Well, and our guest earlier in the year, Chris Bell, had a very similar instance doing a playing lesson where he's talking a guy through a shot. So what I've learned when I caddied, and we had an instant earlier this year at Shoal where we're on the back nine, hole 14, and John, you know, hits his approach, and it just flares it enough right to where he's not short-sighted, but it's going down a hill and then down a downslope, and the pin's tucked behind the downslope. So it's a really slippery shot. Kind of one of those that if you end up inside of 10 feet, you hit a phenomenal chip. And recognizing it and knowing, you know, the way he plays and operates, I just go over and like, okay, well, what are we thinking? And then just let him go. And then he's crystallizing that thought, and he happened to chip in for birdie, which was hilarious because it was just like, you put a bucket of 100 balls there, you're not doing that again, kind of a situation almost.
Well, except I kind of went against what you said a little bit. You had a different thought, a different shot, and I was like, no, I'm not doing that.
No, I simply asked what you were thinking.
Yeah.
And then you verbalized
You
it.
mentioned something about a more lofted shot in passing. Yeah. And
Sure.
then I was like, no, I'm seeing this spot, and I'm going to hit my
Your
go
patented,
to
like,
my patented
pinch
low
60.
check 60
Yep.
that looks like most people's 7-irons. And hit the spot perfect and checked. And
Right.
the goal was just to have a realistic putt at it, but hit it perfect and went in the hole.
Which, I mean, he maybe makes that without me stepping in on it. But when you're a caddy and you're
Yeah, it
walking
had
into
nothing
these
to do with
moments, it's more what?
I'm just joking. That had nothing to
I
do
got
with
nothing from you.
Yeah. That was all me.
When I was caddying, I recognized there was a skill level, like there's a hard line in the sand. Where as a caddy, I'm going to ask the player like what their thoughts are on a shot, and then there's a clear skill level component where it's hard to draw kind of where that is. But there's a point where the player is no longer going to decide this shot, and I'm going to hand them a club and say hit it right here. And often, as a caddy, you're feeling that out through your first few holes, and by hole 6 or 7, you can tell like, okay, I have to tell this guy how to hit every shot. But they would have really good outcomes for their total scores because now I've eliminated their ability to think, which a lot of times is good. And then for the better player, you're simply confirming the thought that they have. And like, yeah, well, I want to hit this gap wedge up here and we're going to draw it in. Like, great. All right, let me see it. And then they just step in and go because you've crystallized the thought and now there's an action that follows. And so I think for better players, they have too many options. Yeah. And so they get stuck in this revolving door of like, well, what do I need to be doing? And for most amateurs that don't quite have that, they're like, well, I don't even know what to do.
I don't have
and so
any
you're
options.
just like, take this driver and putt it. And they're like, what? You know, but you're giving them a high percentage shot or a high percentage miss.
The verbalizing is the key there. Yep. So that's why I said verbalize with yourself, or if you're playing with a friend, you can always bounce it off of them. And you'd be surprised how much that helps you. Yeah, you were playing by yourself that round?
I was.
Yeah, so you're going to be talking.
I didn't have a friend.
Be talking to yourself
Talk to
a lot.
ChatGPT. I don't know.
Yeah.
Ask him what club to hit.
Yeah.
I'd get some really fascinating things by the end of the round, I think.
I'm sure you would.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, like, not to over dramatize it, but like for me, that's a hard thing to learn how to do because it seems silly, but it is a game changer for me because it keeps me out of my own head. And if I have like a bad 2 or 3 hole run and I do that, it's my only chance at like realigning.
Sure.
Is starting to talk out loud to myself.
Yeah.
So it's probably something worth doing more often than just relying on it when you're sucking.
I try to do it every round, and I'll say it this way because there was a point I wanted to get to with something you had mentioned, Duke, earlier about, you know, trying to play, you know, better golf and stuff and incorporating mindset things. And I feel like when you're playing really well, which will happen, you know, an X amount of times a year. It doesn't happen often enough, but those are the days I would say I've got potential to shoot a new low, right? So everything's clicking, everything's working. Often in those instances, regardless of skill level, the player is free mentally. They're kind of just stepping into each shot. Maybe they do have a pretty polished process, but there's not a ton of discussion or thinking going on. And everything feels kind of like the timing of the swing's right. We're seeing putts. We're making that stuff. So for me, you know, that's where everything comes together and I have a chance for a new career low. That's where I would say my A game is, right? Everything else, so the other 98% of your rounds, is a lesser version of that. So if you're the player whose bad rounds is, you know, let's say a 90, as a coach, that's what I'm trying to impact mindset-wise. And can I steal a few strokes from that because we're a little more intentional and we're a little more pragmatic about our decision making, right? And so that's where, as John was just alluding to, like the process helps you. It's not necessarily for those super low days, although it does if you're trying to break through 80 for the first time or 70. There is some anxiety that goes with that too, which is again where you have to falter to your pre-shot process and routine. But for the days where it's like, I'm just struggling and how do I get this thing into the house without, you know, losing too many, that's where the commitment to it really helps.
The score should surprise you pleasantly on those days.
Yeah.
Where it's like, it felt like a damn battle and you want to get the hell out of there. But then you look at the scorecard and you're like, oh, that's not so bad.
Yep.
And that's because you were so mindful of literally being less shitty when you're shitty, which is my favorite thing to tell people.
Right.
Like, we're not interested in your best shots or your best rounds. It's like, how do we keep your margins slim when you're having an off day?
Right.
Which is what you're talking about.
Well, and so at least for me, and I've talked and worked with enough golfers that this has remained true. And I know you have a real good sensitive pair of hands, so you pick up on contact.
Ooh,
right?
Ooh. That's a topic.
We'll
We
get
could
to
do
that
a
one
whole
later.
podcast on that.
That did not come out the way I wanted it to.
I knew that was coming.
Got some Jergens over
point-
there. Johnson and Johnson. Whatever.
Oh my God, I need to find a better way to word that.
Never gonna let it down.
My point is, you pick up on club
hold my
face
hand?
interaction better than a lot of players, right? So you have an ability to feel, you know, heel, toe contact, stuff like that, right? And I think for so long, without really recognizing it, I had an ability to kind of pick up on those things, but so much of my judgment on the quality of the shot was, did I pure the iron or not? Did I have a good flushed iron shot or not? And what John was just talking about with like the result should surprise you. There was a vivid memory for me at Tiffany a few years ago that happened where some odd reason I'm having a solo round. I think it was just a playing lesson that got rescheduled or canceled. So I was like, well, I'm going to go play. And I had a day where, for some odd reason, I just could not find the center of the club face. So everything felt like high on the face, toey. And I'm not writing anything down, so I'm just hitting shots. And I know I had made a few mistakes and lost a couple balls. And then I get done with my round, and I'd birdied 18. So I felt like I had a little momentum, and I'm starting to fill out my scorecard, and I'd shot 4 under. So I'd shot 68, and I'm like, wait, okay, I missed a hole. And so I go back, and I'm like, and then I pull out my phone to kind of go GPS, and I'm like tracking things, and I'm like, no, okay, I saved par there, and I realized, like, I was so upset with how I struck the ball that I left frustrated, and I didn't really realize that I'd saved a lot of pars. I'd gotten up and down quite a few times, and I only made 2 bogeys, and I had somehow managed to find 6 birdies. But because I was so invested in every shot, I completely ignored what the results were, and then got to the parking lot and was like, oh, well, okay. That was actually what I was hoping for, kind of a situation. And so being somebody who would think their way into a bad score for 20 years and then flipping that to going, oh my gosh, like I actually had a good score and I wasn't aware, was like this weird, euphoric moment, because I was like, holy crap, like I didn't I didn't think my way into like losing 5 golf balls today. Because had I known, like, okay, you're 3 under going into 18, well, I would have completely wet the bed. Or even earlier in the round, it would have been something completely different. And so those are things that I've had to learn. Like, I don't really care about the strike. It's, did it get to where I'm looking to go, and then just move on and go to the next swing. So, yeah.
It's ironic, because we spend all our time working on our swings and trying to hit the ball better, all to get to the course and go, I really don't give a shit how I hit the ball. It just needs to go in the hole.
As long as I hit my targets, don't lose balls. Yeah.
Well, it's good enough. Just go in the hole.
Is the result there or not? And then move on.
Yep.
Well, and back to the Masters, and what I think was actually a better mental performance, not the best scoring performance, was Nick Dunlap.
Oh, totally.
Well, yeah.
He goes out, shoots a 90 round 1.
Yep.
Still decides to play round 2 and comes back and shoots a 74.
That's some Snyder golf right there.
Yeah.
What do I got to lose now?
Yeah.
Like that's a turnaround.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
In front of those
cool.
crowds, Augusta National. Young kid too. He's only 24, I believe.
Yep.
He's already won on tour once.
Yeah.
But just to come back out the next day and actually be able to commit to your shots and have confidence in your ability to play Augusta National and just keep it a couple over after going 18
the flip side
over
is you're
the day
like,
before.
well, that was so bad on day 1. I can't embarrass myself any worse.
I was gonna
let's
say,
just
Yeah,
have
what do I have
fun.
to lose?
Yeah. It can be kind of relieving,
Yep.
but
I mean,
at the same time, it was just
I didn't really look at his day 1 card. Was it just a consistently bad day, or did he have some big numbers?
he had some
Like
big numbers, and it was
Yes.
both.
Yes.
Yeah, both.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he was in like a really stuck position. So he would either block it 40 yards right into the trees or snap hook it. Like
he played Duke
I
golf.
want to hang out with this guy
That was every single shot.
You're
It was either
basically
way
hanging
right
out
or way
with
left.
him right now. That's
until he shoots 65.
I shoot 90
and then I'm like,
regularly.
oh, that's why you're a pro.
hey, I can block it right or hook it with everybody.
No,
so.
I was in a group chat with a couple of my buddies, and someone had sent a screenshot of his scorecard, and I was just like, yeah, here comes the WD, fake an injury. 'Cause so many tour players, I mean, people poke fun at it, but that's what a lot of guys would do in that situation. They're so embarrassed.
Yeah.
They're just like,
Well, my back hurts.
Well, because the next closest guy shot 79.
Yeah.
Nobody in the field shot in the 80s.
He was the first person to shoot 90 or more that was under the age of 50 since 1954 at Augusta.
Thank you, Jim Nance.
This
Cool.
It's
is
like
pure Brandon Tritech.
yeah.
Would never have
he's
learned
setting
that.
records out there.
This didn't
for
even
high
make the
score.
telecast. Yeah.
Like,
Well,
Deep cut.
I mean, that's got to be mentally scarring to you. Like, you're breaking all the worst records.
what I noticed was
I don't think
earlier
he was
in the
thinking
year,
about that.
Justin Thomas had set a record for most strokes gained round to round. Like he shot, what was it, like 79, and then came back and shot like a 62. or something like that.
Something like
Ended
that.
up making the cut, and so he had set a PGA Tour record
Talking about
for like
Sawgrass.
biggest
Yeah.
stroke
Yeah.
swing.
Yeah.
And it was like at 16, I want to say, was the number he set, and then Nick breaks it, but it's because he shot 90 and then shot something closer to par a few weeks later, and it's like, yeah, maybe that's not a record you want to have, but I love to see tour players that still have that fight and resilience in them.
Was that his first Masters?
I don't think so.
I don't
Maybe
think
a
so.
second.
No, because he won last year, so he would have been in the field, right?
Yeah, he won on the tour.
okay. I feel like he's been there at least
that's
one
right.
time.
Well, and
Yeah.
he was an amateur before that, so he may have gotten in as an amateur.
Yeah, I
when he
mean,
was
he's
younger.
going to be a stud for sure. He's just, getting used to the moment, and that place will do it to you, as we've seen. I mean, I remember texting my dad before the weekend that I feel like Rory's this generation's Greg Norman. I just didn't think he was going to be able to close it out. I'm just like, yeah, this is going to be the one place where Rory just can't get it done.
You should post that on the social medias just to piss him off.
Yeah, have Greg come after me.
Yeah, I don't know which one would get you first, though.
The Shark.
I don't think either one of them would be really thrilled.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Well, Rory's won it. He's fine now.
And Norman would pound you into the ground.
Yeah, he would.
The tough old bird.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt.
But that was kind of another good, going back to your original question, is some rounds you just don't figure it out. And that was a beautiful lesson. And, well, that day's over. Let's try again another day.
Yeah.
Yep.
When seeing him. And so, like, it's okay when that happens. It just happens sometimes.
And I think there's part of how that's kind of changing with the younger generations is there are just too many ways to escape from those kind of tough situations.
Yeah.
Like you
Right.
build endurance and toughness through those repeated brutal rounds and exposure to like negative influences. And if you don't, if like, a kid gets knocked over and you go scoop them up right away and like coddle them all the time, then they're going to react much more negatively to when they fall down.
Yep.
When it's just, hey, if you just sit in it a little bit and be like, yeah, I didn't do the best there. How can I improve going forward and have a more positive kind of mindset as you move forward instead of just immediately giving up and being like, well, I just suck at golf. I guess I'm destined to shoot 90 every round.
Yeah, we get tired of that.
Yeah.
Hearing that crap in here all the time. Or I do.
I do. I hear it
You
all,
get that
every day.
cynicism, and it's like, I don't even want to coach you. Like, if you come in here with that, it's like because you had an off day. I don't want to hear it. I've had so many bad days. I just don't want to hear it.
But if you can build resiliency through, again, gaining back some confidence by sticking to a process, seeing some success, staying mentally committed to improving, there's a pretty good chance you're going to gain in the future. And then when you start having those rounds, mentally it's a lot less draining and you can stay more focused throughout the entire thing. I mean, I used to have the same thing when I played ice hockey. I was not very good because I played as a kid, took like 6 years off, and then played as a senior in high school. So I was one of the worst on the team. And there's a lot of basic stuff that I could no longer do. And it was kind of embarrassing as a high school kid going to practice, and it's like, I can barely even stick handle properly. Like, this is fundamentals these kids have been doing since they were 6, and they're so far ahead of me. But it's like, I'm just going to keep working, and ended up even playing a couple of varsity games near the end of the season. So it's just like, stick to the process. I
mean, it was Iowa.
Yeah, that helps. It wasn't Minnesota or anything.
Yeah.
But it's like, you got to be resilient.
We have hockey in Iowa?
Well,
Also
actually,
a
used to
joke.
have to come down to Kansas City to play some games because we couldn't find enough teams in Iowa to play. So we had to travel played in Omaha, Kansas City, southern Minnesota, up in Faribault.
It's because they were all wrestling.
That's true.
That is true.
Yeah. That's the thing.
So resiliency goes a long way in overcoming
Yeah.
poor outcomes.
Well, and talent aside, I mean, that is really why Rory won.
Yeah.
Because he managed to be able to bottle all that up and push through multiple times in one round.
Right.
Yeah, and talent will only get you so far. At that level, coming down the stretch, final few holes, you can argue all those golfers are on the same, talent level, and they're playing really well. I mean, I've always said a lot of times amateur golfers get this, cryptic view of golf because they're watching Sunday and they're seeing what it takes to win a tour event, not what a tour average really is.
Sure.
And so that context matters too, because understanding what good is in golf is a big struggle for a lot of amateurs.
The best in the world hit 60% of their fairways and 65% of their greens.
Right.
On average.
Yep.
Which is good, but it's not mind-boggling.
It's not perfect, and it's not, I want to hit it down the fairway every time. I'm like, define every time.
Yeah.
Like, let's create some clarity on what that is. And so, it just having an understanding of what you're good at and what you're not good at, and trying to execute.
And good is different for everyone.
Yeah.
You could hit 10% of your fairways, and if it was your first round ever, that's good.
Yeah. Or one green.
Yeah. Like,
that's amazing.
That's a good day.
Yeah.
Yep.
There you go.
So you have to cater it to your own abilities, and you have to be realistic about your own game. It's easy. I used to think I was a lot better than I was because I scored like 75 once, and then I'd shoot 85 and be like, man, I'm an awful golfer compared to what I normally do. But it's like, that's not my normal. 85 is my normal. I had a career day.
Or 80 is your normal.
Yeah. And it's like,
10
I would
gap.
get, if I didn't shoot 75 every time, I'd be like, I'm about to give up golf.
Yeah.
Like, I just couldn't get over that mentally. It's like, well, that's not your actual skill level. That's what you did once. Just because you did it once doesn't mean that's your new
This also applies to yardages.
Yeah.
So because you were downwind, downhill on a tee shot that went 300 yards,
Does not mean you're
does not mean it's your new average.
Yes. I have that discussion almost every day in here.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Hop in the sim. It's like, well, normally I hit it 165. And it's like, all right, you hit 1 out of 10 165. What do you actually hit it? It's like, well, I play at 165. Yeah, and how often do you come up short? Well, most of the time. Well, there's your problem.
I had
You're
that
not- you don't hit
discussion with a high
165.
schooler. We just got to be careful with teenagers because, dense. But like, same thing with pitching wedge. I was like, so what do you play your pitching wedge at? We were on the simulator. He's like, oh, like 145. I'm like, and he hits 3 shots, 120. I'm like, so wait, why? Because those were good struck shot, like well struck shots. He's like, no, that's just what I play it at. And I was, but that's not how far it's going. He's like, no, yeah, it's true. I'm usually like 20 yards short.
I mean, if the greens are concrete, you're playing the bounce, right?
Well, this is what my wedge identifies
That's
as.
not even. Yeah, it's like not even. It's not even carry and roll. It's just like, no, yeah, I play it at that, but it's 20 yards short. Okay, maybe
Then-
we should adjust our yardages.
My
Don't
head
you
just
want to hit it 20
exploded.
yards further?
I feel like we're heading into a different podcast right now. Don't be stupid.
It's math.
Be
Yeah.
realistic and resilient.
There we go.
That'll go a long way.
There you go.
Back to-
There's your, right there on your
Back to
forehead.
reality.
Yeah.
Any parting thoughts on the Masters?
It was entertaining.
There won't be one
It's
that
fun to
good for
watch.
a while. I don't
Every
think.
tournament should ban cell phones.
Oh, that was great.
Yeah.
I totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They do it different, and I like it that way.
I had a student that went, and that was the most noticeable thing he mentioned. It's like it was amazing. People were just
In the
talking
moment.
to each
Yeah,
other
it's weird.
and enjoying things
Yeah.
in life and watching good golfers play golf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is kind of far out. That's such a cool thing that they did to be like just no phones allowed at all.
Yep.
I wish they'd start doing that at concerts, but that's a whole another podcast
Yeah.
Yep.
as well.
But how would we do ballads?
Yeah, exactly.
You have to bring a lighter.
I remember sitting in a show out at the Gorge in Washington, and literally the people in front of us are FaceTiming other people in, and they're all trying to have a conversation like in the middle of the show in the row in front of me. I almost took their phone and threw it.
Yeah. Don't blame you. It
but
does
that's-
ruin the moment.
It does indeed.
It's annoying.
But people want to know what you're having for dinner, so
I really don't.
social media.
Yeah.
All right, so the Masters was awesome.
It was.
That for sure. But
One of the
I
best
almost
ever.
cried.
a great lesson in the mental game.
No
yeah.
question.
From both ends of the spectrum.
Yep.
The first
Yep. Highs and
last.
lows,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. Well, there you go. Be mental. No.
I totally agree.
That wasn't. Yeah, go back and
Yeah.
listen to it. That wasn't the right recap, but
Duke, did you learn more about how to handle yourself
maybe
in the ups and downs?
it's possible. It's possible.
You can talk to yourself more.
We'll see. I probably will. In between show tunes, though. So that's the other piece. So I don't know. No, it was good. I think for many of us who are still trying to kind of break plateaus, that's still one of the bigger challenges. And staying. I always think about. I'm not good at it, but I always think about. There's a movie called The Perfect Game, Kevin Costner, where he, every pitch, you hear clear the mechanism, and then it's just like super focused, and he no longer hears the crowd. He no longer. I don't remember how many times they did that in the movie, but like after a while, you start to go, yeah, I get it. Okay, in 7th, 8th inning, he's got a no hitter going, and like everybody's leaving him alone. He's just totally unaware.
Right.
That sounds like a fun place to be.
It takes a while to get there.
Yeah.
It's an active practice. It won't happen overnight. You got to convince yourself that you're doing things that'll start to pay off in the long run. And that's the hard part, is you probably won't see those results on the scorecard at least right away.
Right.
There's no way you will, but you'll start to feel that, transition through your rounds change and your mindset change and the lack of response to negative outcomes. These guys have seen me go from struggling to break 80 to the player I am now. And I would think that a lot of my body language and behavioral changes over the last 15 years is a big reason for that, because that's something that I always go back to that round that I remember before John and I even knew each other's names. We were shooting high 80s and he beat me and makes just some flippant statement like, "How did I beat you? You're such a better ball striker than I am." And I mulled over that for 3 weeks because I was so consumed by, I should have beat you. Why didn't I? And to get so consumed by some like small flippant statement was exactly the player I was then. And now it would be a throwaway, and I'd just move on and do something that's working for me. And so growth can happen. You just have to attack it.
Yeah.
For sure.
Good stuff.
So in
All right.
closing, I've always been an asshole. Anyways,
You're genuine.
Generally, that only gets worse as you get older. So
more cynical.
get off my lawn.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, that's it. That's our Masters special, which you can take away for the Masters. So we're going to throw in the Masters as many times as possible, so AI picks it up in Google.
Perfect. There you go.
Don't sue us.
The Masters was a great
Don't
term.
sue us, the Masters.
Yeah. Don't sue us, the Masters.
Hello, friends.
Yes. Yes. Actually, I'll end with this story. So I played this charity tournament a couple weeks ago, and we took second place as our group. And so one of our guys had to leave. So as I'm taking his trophy and his Amazon gift card to him, I found a YouTube of the Master song just on a loop. So I turned it up, put it in my pocket, walked in, and I'm like, a tradition like none other. And he just started dying. It was great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
There you go. Thanks for watching. We'll be back. One more episode, and then our season, we get into full golf. Enough of this podcasting stuff.
Yeah.
So we'll see you next one.